Some of the challenges that I've seen companies face is really just around the huge variety of things that you have to do. If you're expanding if you're entering a new country for the first time, you've got to set up your operating entity, you've got to register with the tax and social security agencies, you've potentially got to register employees with those agencies before they even start work for you. You'll have to look at collective agreements perhaps, you're having to look at how do we do all of our tax filings, what do those processes look like, who has to sign them off. So there's an awful lot of things that have to be done, some of which can be very complex and variable between one country and the next. A good example is in Spain, where you have to register employees as working for you as a company before they start work with you, otherwise you're not in compliance of the labour laws in Spain. And this is something that companies don't necessarily fully understand or realise. So everybody on the business development team is looking and getting excited about entering into this new market, and then somebody says, oh yeah, we've hired so-and-so and he started a week ago, and in 2 weeks we've got to pay him. And that's where that problem can become exacerbated, because there's this minefield of things that have to be done. There's various actions and checklists and things that have to be gone through that sometimes people don't think about because they're wrapped up in the excitement of getting the job done. And those are areas with just this huge variety of things you have to do and compliance needs that just become very difficult for a company. You can't necessarily just Google what you have to do in Italy and get a clear list of what those tasks may look like. Now, in the mature countries, you will actually be able to get a reasonable amount of information online, for example. But, for me, it's this minefield of information and process and specifics that become quite difficult for companies to figure out and navigate their way around, and that's the problem. And if you don't do that right at the beginning, you're setting yourself up for a future problem. International expansion is a challenging business. You're going out into the unknown with lots of different requirements for compliance, payroll reporting. You try and compare that with what you're used to domestically, and you look at that internationally, and you get into a minefield of variability of how things work, and what you can do here, you can't do there. So it is a challenging process to determine how to actually cater for these problems. I think the benefits of working with specialists in this market is partly that they've seen more and experienced more, so they're able to help more companies in different ways. But it's actually around having the surety that payroll is being calculated and filed correctly. These companies in the marketplace are experts in what they do. They have a better understanding and a better breadth of expertise and availability of domain expertise than most companies do themselves. Engaging expertise externally is not about being able to pat somebody on the back when things go well, or to have difficult conversations when things don't go well. External providers are able to guide people through what they should be doing and influence or help with other experiences that they've seen of how to go about doing that. As you go internationally, there's an awful lot of complexity of how you're going to bring all of this stuff together, and those partners are there to be able to help you with that process. Now, they're not going to replace your tax advisors. That's something that's worth understanding, is if you're hoping for a global payroll organization to take away all of the compliance on you as a company, realistically that's not going to happen. As a company, you will always be responsible for your own compliance. But what you will have is the availability of people to help you through that process, help test whether you are compliant or not, and actually run a more advanced controls operation. So when we get into SSA 16 and SOX type controls, those vendors, because it's all they do, will often have better control points than most organizations do, because they're doing it the same way for a number of different companies. But to me, it's just that availability of domain expertise. That's the thing that's really, really important, because companies themselves just don't have it. It's very difficult to interpret. So payroll is a very scenario-based thing. So what works here doesn't necessarily work here. And just having that availability of other people to manage the process, to be able to say to you, yes, you're in compliance there, yes, you're in compliance there, hey, this thing's coming here and that could be a problem for you, you need to start looking at that. That's where the value is, because that should come as part of services that you buy. If you were to be looking at your, your tax advisor type services, that can be very expensive to procure. So having that availability of other people to ask a question to, I think sometimes is what's really important. It's not about outsourcing your responsibilities for tax filings. It's about other people who are specialists in making sure that that is done accurately and correctly for you, and that's really where some of the value of the overall mix of services is added at.